Hey, it's Kish Knight, and I'm just here to talk to you a little bit about my upcoming novel, The Shelf 2, which is way behind, of course. And I've got to explain it because The Shelf 2 has been delayed so long because I went back to add character development to it, and I've got the book 3, the novel number 3, The Crescent, right behind it. I've also been writing that at the same time. Number 3 is halfway done, halfway through, but it's just that I've held off a lot on this part number 2, and I just want to explain a little bit why in this today with you. So pay attention. I'm about to tell you. Stop video. Doesn't work. So in The Shelf 2, one thing I have made it, one thing I've really made a priority in The Shelf 2, the second part to The Shelf, is Corey. Corey's a main character. We don't know a lot about Corey after the first book because he's this mysterious guy that Bree meets and she just falls in love with. And they get closer, but we close the book, the part 1, still not knowing a lot about this character. And as I search deep and I brainstorm for this part 2 book, I realized that maybe I didn't know as much about this character as possible, and that was translating through to my novel, through the readers. I even had a young reader working with me on The Shelf 2, and she pointed out that, hey, we've got to know more about this character, about this Corey Parsons. He's such a main character, but he doesn't get a lot of airtime, or book time, I should say, page time, ink time, word time. But he cannot just be a pretty face. He can't just be the mysterious guy that all the girls like, and he's got these powers, and we found out also in the part 1 that he's an immortal. He has to have some kind of storyline of his own. He cannot just be a character that everyone else is getting to play off of. So I've taken a lot of time with this novel, with this part 2 book. So much time so that I even have the third novel stacked up right behind it, that I'm like halfway through the third novel too, just because I wrote the part 2 novel, the part 2, and I went back for character development because I wanted more of the characters in part 2, and I also wanted more for Corey because I realized that we were closing off this part 2 book and we still didn't have a lot about Corey at all. So what I did, I went back and I added some pivotal scenes in the beginning of The Shelf 2, in the middle, and I chopped up a bit of the end so that I could get stuff in for Corey. I've added some scenes where we get to see a more human side of Corey. We get to see more of his relationship with Lilani. Lilani's a character that I introduced in part 2 in The Shelf 2. She's the girl that is basically battling Bree for Corey's affection through no fault of any of theirs. It's just how things turned out. Neither one of them are bad people. Not Bree, not Corey, not Lilani, certainly. But we get to see more of his interactions with Lilani. We get to see a softer side. We get to see that, you know, he honestly, truly did care for Lilani. He also honestly did care for Bree. And we get to learn more about people in his family that he cared a lot about that he lost. Okay, so basically when I say that I chopped out the ending and that helped me get to develop the character more, that happened because of I had this very climatic scene, which was not the climax of The Shelf 2. And I then had another climax at the very end, and then I had a little conclusion. And that in itself was bad for the novel, right? You know, much less the character development. But that was bad for the novel because I had this scene that was so big and climatic, and then there's a letdown because I had to calm it back down because I was going to go up to a climax in another scene, which was actually the real climax. And then there's a conclusion at the end. So when I realized that, hey, I really got to get some more character development going here, I chopped the big climax at the end and the conclusion, the original conclusion. And I made that original climactic scene, I made that the real climax, the final climax. And then I closed the book there. So that was a big help to me. Because with that original draft, I had 199 pages written, and this was way farther than I expected this book to go. Because this book originally was supposed to be a little novella. I planned it to be just 100 pages, a very small book. That's why, you know, it didn't have its own name, like the Horn or the Crescent or anything. It was the Shelf 2, because it was supposed to be a little novella that I just wanted to tie up some loose ends in. And because I hadn't finished, you know, writing these characters in certain scenes. In the first book, the part 1 book, which, you know, incidentally, I found it, I got it right here, and it's where it all started. I mean, this actually is the third revised cover, but it's not the final. The cover has since changed from this, and the Shelf part 1. But, you know, originally the Shelf part 2 was supposed to be 100 pages, and I'd gotten it up to 199 pages and still going. And so I said, well, you know what? Maybe I'll get it down to 150 pages, and I should chop 49 pages out of this. I didn't get that done. I only got 14 pages chopped out. But once I did that, and that's chopping that, you know, final climax, that original climax, and that original conclusion out. Once I did that, I felt free. I felt a lot more freer, and it's like I could see clearly, and I realized that, okay, at this point, I feel I can go back and explain more things about these characters and explain where they were coming from and what they were feeling.